You are watching a Phenomenal Rise talk show, and today we are sitting here. We're going to be having a word with Naledi Shange, the author of Rosemary Ndlovu, the Killer. Such an interesting story. It's very interesting and disturbing at the same time. And I can imagine what she had to go through as a journalist who had to unpack this story and speak to the family members of Rosemary Ndlovu who were affected by Rosemary Ndlovu's doings. Today, the topic of the day is nature of a woman. What does it mean to you? What do you think the role of a woman is within our society, within our communities, within our families? What do you know about the challenges of a woman that disturbs a woman and limits the beautiful things that she can do for her family and for her community? For me, a nature of a woman is pretty much simple because I'm a woman myself, but I've been through my own fair share of challenges. And at the end of the day, I've realized that it's understanding who you are as a woman. What is your role as a woman within your family, within your community, in your friend's life, all around the world? What is your role? And how best can you actually deliver? How best can you serve? And it's unfortunate that sometimes we get disturbed along the way, along the challenges of life, and we are unable to take everything in. We are unable to soldier on, we are unable to overcome and get through all the disturbing things that we face. But what can we do for ourselves? What can we do for ourselves? What can we do for the other woman that we are living with? Because I believe that our role as a woman, the biggest role of a woman, is to fix another woman's crown. No matter what that woman has been through, no matter what she has lost, no matter what she has done, just try and always lend a helping hand and have a big heart to listen to somebody else's story and do something and play your part. So the most biggest thing for me as a woman is to be able to fix another woman's crown. It's so important that we do not judge. We do not look at another woman with the eye of saying, oh, I couldn't have done this myself, but also understanding that we go through so many challenges and our challenges are different. And because of how different we are as well, our strength might be different, and we will not all overcome a challenge the same way someone else might have overcome it. But if you are in a better space in your life and you have overcome your own challenges, lend a helping hand. A smile, just smiling for another woman as they walk by to you. You do not know what you might have done. Today, we live in a society where we are challenged so much and we have a lot on our plate. We have even silent battles that we are unable to speak about. And because of that, we are trapped and we find ourselves doing brutal things. It's so sad that we are at a space in our lives where a high rate number of mothers are now taking the lives of their own kids. And for different reasons, it could be depression, it could be postnatal depression, it could be poverty. And I remember at some point I heard a story of a woman who took the life of her child because the father of the child decided to leave her. And she was so hurt, she was so disturbed, she was so much in pain that she took the life of the child, and she is now arrested and serving. But on the other hand, my biggest concern is to actually get a chance to sit down with this woman and find out, what were you going through? What is it that you were battling with so much that you couldn't handle? I don't judge, and I'm hoping that we can also find ourselves in a space where we do not judge at all, but we try and find out really what is the biggest struggles. The aim of the show here is to unpack the challenges that women go through. Hence, it's called a phenomenal rise for a reason. You are going to fall. You're going to fall. You can fall 10 times in life, but the trick is to get up the 11th time. Get up 11 times. Fall 10 times and get up 11 times. You never know when you'll be able to conquer. You never know when it is time for your breakthrough. But it's also important to understand that everything comes to a pass. Whatever challenges that you are facing at home, I'm hoping that our special guest who's going to join us today as we unpack the story of Rosemary Ndlovu, who killed 6 family members of hers, all in the name to claim insurance because she had a gambling issue than anything else. And we also get to hear the stories of other women. And sometimes it's because of poverty, sometimes it's because of a separation with the father. of the child. And we're hoping that today we will be able to share some solutions and tips with you so that you understand that nothing doesn't come to an end. Everything does come to an end. You will be okay. We have to soldier on, and we cannot control the heavy challenges that we face in this world, but we can overcome them with just a little bit of faith, with a little bit of self-care as well, with a little bit of understanding and accepting where you are. It's important that you accept your situation as it is. But into engapheli iyahlola. And understanding that it's important that you accept where you are in life. By accepting where you are in life, it will give you a kickstart on how you can move past it. Because one of the biggest reasons why we find ourselves depressed is because we are living in the future and we're expecting so much from the future. It's either we are also living in the past and we are hoping to change the past, and we are forgetting to be present at this moment. Run the course, face the challenge head on, face the pain, understand the pain, understand who it makes you, who it turns you to be, so that should you find yourself in that very same challenge again, you are able to self-control yourself mentally and emotionally. Because when you have power over your mind and power over your emotions, no matter what you go through in life, you will be able to endure the pain, you'll be able to overcome the challenge. But let us not forget that at the end of the day, challenges are part of life. There'll always be light and there'll always be darkness. There'll always be positive and there'll always be negative. We cannot have positive without the negative. But what we need to do is to be able to be strong enough to understand how then do we deal with the negative side of life. After the break, I'll be welcoming Naledi Shange, the author of Rosemary Ndlovu, the killer, as we unpack the story and also get to understand what happens to a woman's mind who has struggled to serve as a woman in this society. Loving is what I've been waiting for quite a long time. Oh, na na na, yeah. Ooh, yes, who can? Yes, who give I good, who can give I good loving, I say. Who can? Oh, yeah. Give I good love. Yeah, good loving, I say. Good loving, I say. And just like I promised you, my special guest has joined me, Naledi Shange. This is the author of the book called Rosemary the Killer. Such a very interesting story, but let me not spoil the fun for you. And let's start off by making sure that you do get a chance to get to know our special guest of the day. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you, Sis Mandy?
I'm also fine. So tell us, who are you? Where do you come from? What do you do?
Okay, my name is Naledi Shange, as you said. I'm a girl from Woodbank, born in Benoni, grew up in Woodbank, and I'm a journalist. I am currently working as a news editor for Times Live and the Sunday Times. And I'm an author, as you've rightly said. I am the mother to two beautiful children, a mother of twins, Kanyiseli and Ikayelihle. And I'm basically a lady that's just trying to navigate through life and life's challenges and all of that. As you've said, I've recently written the book Rosemary Ndlovu, the story rather on Rosemary Ndlovu, and I believe it's one of the first books that I've written. There's much more to come, and yeah, that's Naledi in a nutshell.
Okay, so before we jump right straight to the topic of the day, which is nature of a woman, and I just have one question in particular for you. As a journalist, what type of stories do you write? We've seen the book Rosemary, but what are the other stories that you've touched base on?
I've been blessed that the news organizations that I've worked for have allowed me to dive into a whole lot of different kind of stories. But I'm particularly passionate about crime and court reporting, which is how I landed into the Rosemary Ndlovu story. I've covered a lot of crime stories over the years. Rosemary Ndlovu was the very last crime story that I actually covered. But I've spent many hours in courtrooms. The Oscar Pistorius story, yeah, one of the big ones that I've also covered. But I enjoy writing crime stories. It's stories about people. It's stories about people behind the stories. So it's a beat that I actually enjoy. But everything from politics to human interest stories, I write everything.
And now, considering the stories that you work on, why crime in particular? And as a woman, what has actually made you fall in love with writing the stories about crime?
The reason why I actually took an interest in crime stories comes from my dad. Okay. My dad was a prison warden, and he'd always come back home with the most fascinating stories from prisoners. He would share stories about why people are the way that they are. And so for me, it just sparked a curiosity, you know. And the first time I got into a courtroom, it was at the time when there was a painting of Jacob Zuma that was defaced in Johannesburg. And I walked into a courtroom and I fell in love with what happens in the courts. And from there, started to take a particular interest in how the court system works, the stories of the people that we see in the dock. And yeah, so that's how it came about. Prison stories, crime stories, those are the kind of stories that I really have a passion in telling.
And how has it affected you? Because I know that with these crime stories, most of the time you have to be there on the scene to actually see the accident or the incident or whatever that may have occurred. What are the challenges? What are the most challenges that you face, especially when you have to go back home and be a mother, or be a friend, be a sister? How has it affected you mentally and in every way possible?
Journalism forces you to develop a thick skin. Because we're exposed to these kind of stories almost on a daily basis. I think one of the stories that I remember that really touched me was the story of Kapsile Shabane. She was a little girl living with albinism in Witbank who was stolen from her bed by a group of men who wanted to murder her, who basically murdered her and skinned her and decapitated her, all for the sake of her body parts and her skin. So, you know, you get exposed to such stories where you get to walk into the families homes, and they get to share their pain with you. They get to share their traumatic events with you. But at the end of the day, you need to take care of self. So what I've learned to do is try to disconnect in a way, take care of myself mentally, ensure that I'm there and tell their stories as best as I can, because at that time, that is how I honor the victims, I honor the families that have gone through whatever it is that they've gone through. But taking it all in, journalists are people that have a lot of mental health issues. I've found that in our industry, you'd find people dealing with depression, anxiety, and it's because of the things that we're exposed to. So it's always quite important to always take a step back and to take care of self, you know. It takes a lot out of you. You go to crime scenes, you go to, for example, in the Joburg CBD, where just a couple of weeks ago, there was a fire where people died. And, you know, you're helpless at the time. There's only so much that you can do. So journalists, as much as we get attacked a lot with the things that we do, we go through a lot as individuals as well. But as I said, it's all about taking care of self, learning to talk about the things that you see, the things that you experience, and sharing it with somebody, even if it's not a professional. But it really helps to tell your stories instead of internalizing everything.
Which brings me to my next concern, rather, what does the organizations that you work for, because I know that they are aware, because you cover the news and all of that, they are aware that at some point you will be affected mentally. What are the measures that they have to do on the side, or that they are supposed to do if they are not? When it comes to counseling, psychology, do you have psychologists in the house, social workers in the house? What kind of a setup does these organizations prepare for you so that at the end of the day, you're at your best?
You know, honestly speaking, we hear of psychologists that are available to staff members and all of that. But in all honesty, I think using the office or the media house platforms, I've only ever been through counseling twice. And I don't blame the organizations because on a daily basis, the stories are rolling. You cover one story today and it's on to the very next day. So that's why I'm saying it's all about self. But more could be done, in fact, to really give journalists the support that they need to debrief. You know, it's something that I also try to do with my team as a news editor, where I know someone has been covering stories that are gruesome, stories where they've been exposed to the most touching stories of other people. I try to find out from my team, are you okay? Is there anything that I can do to assist, even not as a professional? But really, journalism is one of the cruelest, I think, industries because you just have to keep on going. And, you know, a lot of the time, even the people that we speak to, you'll find that they've shared their stories with you, they've shared their pain with you, and they've told you exactly what it is that they're going through, expecting solutions as well from you. expecting some sort of assistance. And at the end of the day, sometimes the best that I can do is write your story with the hope that it gets out there, whether it be to a government department or whoever can give you assistance. But that's as far as I can go. So it's daunting. It's daunting.
So have you ever been so attached to a story that you felt like, okay, now I'm crossing the line. I've stepped out of just writing the story. Now I feel like there's more I can do for this family or for this victim or whatever the case is. Have you ever found yourself in such a position?
It happens. It happens quite a lot. Um, it happens quite often. But you try your best to draw the line of where you can.
Yes.
And by drawing the line, it doesn't mean cutting off contact, but you link up the people that you're speaking to or your sources with the relevant departments that can assist. For example, in the book that I've written, the Rosemary Ndlovu story, one of the people that I met that deeply touched me was Rosemary's sister, Joyce Ndlovu. I covered in the book how Rosemary had wanted to burn her and her 5 children alive in the household. Now, I've spent many hours at Joyce's house, sitting there trying to talk about Rosemary, find out about the kind of life that they've lived. And at the end of the day, you're exposed to the dire poverty that she was living in. And, you're writing a book and people are thinking there are millions that are going to be coming into your pocket. And it's like, I'm sharing my story with you, but what happens after that? What do I get out of it? So the best that I've done, I've assisted where I can, financially where I can. And I've tried as well to link her up with the correct departments that can perhaps also assist her and her children. But the sad part is Joyce is one of many that I get exposed to as a journalist. I remember a couple of years ago, there was another building that had burnt her in Joburg where I met a woman who said she had lost everything.
Yeah.
And she had 8 children, her own children as well as her grandchildren. And the best I could do was go on Facebook, put out a post and say, I'm collecting clothes and whatnot so that I can assist these victims. So beyond the story, I try my best to go as far as I possibly can, but it's not always possible, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking because people open up their hearts, their homes, and tell you everything that there is. They basically lay their hearts bare for you.
Yeah.
And afterwards, at times, all you can do is walk away.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that you face when you're working with people, no matter what field of expertise that you're working in. Because now when people see you, whether you're a journalist, a writer, whatever the case is, they see solutions, they see bread, they see someone who's gonna come and change their lives. And it's so painful when you just walk in and out and you can't make a difference. But I also believe that it's important to just forgive yourself for what you cannot do, because you can't stretch yourself further than you can. It's also important that there's a time where you draw the line and say, I'm just a journalist and I'm going to end it here. I love your strength. I love the work that you are doing. I was very excited the first time I met you because I watched the documentary, The Rosemary, and I was very disturbed because I play a very huge role in the society and communities, in my family, for my kids. So it disturbs me when I get to hear or watch a story or listen to a story of someone who's actually the opposite. But more than anything, I'm concerned what happens mentally, which brings us to the topic of the day, which is nature of a woman. What is the nature of a woman? And just in case you find yourself in a position where you know a woman who literally does not portray those character traits of a woman that is needed within a society, a family, or a community. What help can you do and how can you spot the signs? But we'll quickly take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to dive straight to the topic of the day, which is nature of the woman. I'm Amanda Ndebele and I'm sitting with Naledi Shange. What is a nature of a woman from your own understanding? What is required of you as a woman? What role are you supposed to play in your community, in your friends' lives, in your family's lives, as a mother, as a wife, as a sister? And today I'm sitting with Naledi Shange, who's a journalist who's covered so many amazing stories. I'm sorry to use the word amazing. Most of them are disturbing, but yeah, we need to hear the stories. And today we're going to be talking and discussing and just trying to find out, especially on the book that you wrote, Rosemary Ndlovu, where we saw, I think this trended a lot. A lot of people got to understand and learn about women, about Fana Rosemary. But before we touch deep into that, what is the nature of a woman from your understanding?
A woman, I would think, is a nurturer. I think that's the one word that comes to my head It's a caregiver. It's somebody who has the ability to turn something from nothing, you know. They are a person who feeds into another without necessarily losing self, but they pour into another. Um, yeah, that is how I would describe a woman. A woman is strength. A woman is power. A woman is life, if I could put it that way. Yeah.
And now we live in a very crazy society. I think we live in a very crazy world. And not only in South Africa, in a country that we live in, I think when you go deeper into listening to the stories of the incidents that happen in other countries, you become even more shocked that it's the world, you know. What happens mentally in a mental mind of a woman? Let's talk about Rosemary in particular, because that was a very big story. I haven't had a chance to read the book, but I watched the documentary from start to finish. And you are sitting here and you have spoken to the people that were involved. What then is the big issue in the mental state of a woman like Rosemary?
Actually, the question that you're asking is what led me to writing the book. Because I sat in the courtroom, and for the longest time, I couldn't understand this woman. And I thought to myself, while we are seeing all these theatrics that we are seeing, the play that she was giving for the media, I thought to myself, there must be a story behind this woman. I'd never really heard of a woman who had done things like she had done, who had killed family members and her own children and all of that. And that's what got me digging, trying to find out what makes a woman turn into what Rosemary Ndlovu became. And my journey was quite interesting. The things that I found out about Rosemary were things that were shocking, were things that were, you know, for example, one of the things that I learned was that she had a gambling addiction.
Okay.
So a lot of the people who I spoke to believe that it was her gambling addiction that led to her having the urge to always have money, and thus she figured out that insurance policies were the quickest way to get money. There were other people who just described her as somebody who was greedy, but who also loved the expensive life, but did not really know how to work towards it.
Yes.
And again, she found insurance companies to be the quickest way to make a buck. But the most interesting thing that I found came from a relative of hers, a gentleman who contacted me via Facebook, who said to me, perhaps Rosemary is doing all of this out of her own, not from her own accord. She could not even be in control of the things that she was doing. And what he spoke about was a curse that was bestowed upon Rosemary when she was a young girl. And they were saying that what we are seeing playing out are the results of that curse. And so there was a lot of things to it. One of the things that surprised me, though, during the court case was that Rosemary's mental health was never put to the fore. Her lawyers never suggested that she go for a mental checkup, despite all of the things that we were seeing in court, which led us to ask ourselves, is this person totally, you know, okay mentally?
Yes.
But she was never subjected to any testing. She never underwent any psychiatric tests and things like that, even to this day. But at the same time, you know, I've heard of people who've murdered their children before. Stories like that have become so much more common. But every time I've heard of a woman that's murdered their child, it hasn't been for the same reasons as Rosemary. Whereas we know that Rosemary killed for money, to access the trust funds that the children had. Other women that I've learned of who've done similar crimes, who've killed their children, have been for poverty. A lot of the time that we've covered stories this year, especially in the Eastern Cape and rural areas, women tend to kill their own because of the dire circumstances that they're in. Postnatal depression is something that's not spoken about. And as I said, it's something that is quite rife in areas that are impoverished, in areas where words such as depression don't exist, like vernac, you know. There's not a direct term where people are able to, you know, to describe what postnatal depression and all of that is. But as I said, when it comes to Rosemary, it was a completely different issue. Her first child, for example, John T, was killed via poison. The second child also suspected poisoning. But she's never really given us any explanation as to what it is that led her to become the woman that she is. So all of us are still assuming as to what it is that led her to this.
And I think because I watched the documentary, like I said, I think what is more disturbing is the fact it's her response in court. That's what disturbed me the most. I'm not saying that she was supposed to pretend to have sympathy to feel guilty for what she has done, but I actually got to notice that there's a mental illness that is now taking its course, because there's always a reward for everything that we do. So I don't think you can have the strength and the bravery to keep on killing, especially people that are close to you, without becoming disturbed. But because I'm one person who serves in communities and who does a lot of women empowerment, I believe that those are the little issues that, as much as they are disturbing and very painful, and people need to pay the price for, but it's also the one of the issues that we really need to try and solve, and one of the issues that we need to sit here and have a discussion, so that we bring awareness, so that just in case there's a family member that is going through that, the family can be able to notice whether it's a curse and all of that. The sad part is also that we as the Black society are not familiar with depression and postnatal depression, like you were saying on your end, and we still need to learn and have enough knowledge around that. But it's still disturbing that a mother, someone who's supposed to raise and love this child and do so much for this child, can actually have the heart to take their life. And we don't have a clear answer, because these stories are now different from they vary from person to person. And when you spoke to the sister, I remember the mother, there was a time when the mother was saying, "Not my child."
Yeah.
That's also a mental problem, because now, which means in her subconscious mind, she's carrying the beautiful child that she gave birth to, who she had dreams to say, this child is going to become 1, 2, 3. But at the end of the day, she then becomes something else. And you want to carry the good side only and deny the bad side. But at night, that woman is going through so much disturbing events, because now Rosemary is inside, and she, how long was she actually sentenced? Is it life?
It's life imprisonment and about 100 more years on top of that. So she'll never come out.
So she will never come out, basically. Okay. So again, when you were writing the story, what actually were you trying to achieve more than anything, besides just doing your research and being curious about the person that she is and her mental state of mind? But what were you aiming to achieve to the person who's going to be sitting down and reading this book?
The thing is, the book, the direction of the book changed as I did my research and I started to talk to the people that I spoke to. As I said, the initial reason why I started on this journey was to find out who Rosemary is. But at the end of the day, I was linked to a web of people who were all affected by her crimes. And I'm talking about her victims now, the 6 people that she killed. And the book, although it has Rosemary's name on the cover and it has her picture on the cover, the book is about more than Rosemary. But it's an ode basically to the victims who died under Rosemary's hand. I was exposed to so many stories of people explaining the relationship that they had with Rosemary, the losses that they suffered, and how their lives have completely changed forever so because of Rosemary's actions. And what you said earlier is correct, that the saddest part actually is that we haven't seen a side of Rosemary of remorse. And instead, it was shocking. The first time I walked into the courtroom, for example, was before the cameras came in. I was the only reporter sitting in court, and I saw a completely different Rosemary, a Rosemary who seemed to be, like your normal auntie from next door, who was just sitting there in court, minding her own business, writing down her notes. And then when the cameras and all of that started attending court, I saw a completely different side to Rosemary. I saw a Rosemary who was, all for the action, all for the attention. And that's what I'm saying made me believe that there may be something that's not completely right with Rosemary.
I think, again, what I also noticed with Rosemary as I was watching the documentary, and I would see every time she sees a camera, she would act up. So from my own understanding, since I deal a lot with mental health issues, I actually realized that this is an act. It's a self-defense mechanism that is kicking in every time she sees cameras, because she knows the law. She was a cop. She knows the law. She has arrested people, she has solved cases herself, so she knew what is coming for her, and she knew that she's now at the end. And that was just a self-defense mechanism to say, I'm going in for life, and I'm not going to be remorseful about it. but she's also just trying to get herself going and trying to find a better way to accept by, playing that character that she was playing. Because I remember there was a part where she actually threw Pringles, is it Pringles or chips, to another police officer, and she would swear at the judges and swear at the other police officers. But deep down in her heart, I know that she was probably battling with so much. And I kept on saying to myself when I was watching it, I hope she doesn't commit suicide, because it's heavy. If it's heavy on us who are just watching, it's heavy on the family, the victims involved. It must be heavy on her. But when we come back after the break, I want us to really touch base on what are the signs that we can look out for. What are the signs that a family can look out for? Because I don't think Rosemary is the first woman to actually use her family for insurance. We've heard those stories, as much as they were not as big as Rosemary's stories. I know someone who was a neighbor who'd actually killed his wife just so he can claim insurance. We see that happen all the time. Some stories are actually still undiscovered, but those are the signs that we also need to look out for in marriage. Rosemary was married twice, or was in a relationship twice, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember the last relationship, the last person that she killed, who was a partner, did see the signs to say closer to his death, 1, 2, 3 happened. Before we close up here, let's just touch base quickly on her being a wife now.
The thing is, I think Black society and the circumstances under which we live make us not scrutinize certain things. When a relative of yours covers you under insurance policies, you think they're doing the noble thing. They want to take care of you, they want to take care of your family. Should anything happen to you, we don't see the broader picture, and that's why I'm saying it's a societal issue. We see this thing as an act of ubuntu. Even Rosemary said it like that in her own words, that insuring all these people is an act of Ubuntu. And it's quite unfortunate, as you've rightly put, that since Rosemary Ndlovu's case has come to the fore, other people have actually been arrested for committing similar crimes to hers. It's become a can of worms, basically. But it's actually quite sad to see that people would be using their families as cash cows. But the thing is, I don't think one would necessarily be able to pick it up the first time a death occurs, or the second time that a death occurs. But most of the time, it has to be on the insurance policies, basically the insurance companies. As we've seen, they've made a lot of changes coming after Rosemary's story, where they've strengthened their systems, and they scrutinize a bit better when it comes to somebody claiming repeatedly for deaths that are unnatural, for deaths that happen in the most gruesome of ways, like the people who were involved in Rosemary's story.
And did you really speak to, I remember there was also a part where I think she's the nephew, if I'm not mistaken, who had asked Rosemary to assist her because of a student loan, some issue like that. Yeah, and again it comes back to, because we are a society that sometimes we struggle from poverty and financial struggles, and we have one family member who's financially well off, who has all the resources at her disposal, and you are happy that my auntie is going to be helping me with school fees with 1, 2, 3, but yet she's the one. It's just a pathway for her to gamble with your life. The husband, I know that the lady had a husband. Did you get a chance to speak to the husband?
Yes. The first time I got to speak to Jabun Tlapo was in the courtroom. I noticed this gentleman that was there for a couple of days, and I approached him, and that was a broken man. When he told me about how now he's left to take care of the children that he had with Zanele, and just to think that the only sin that Zanele actually had was going after what was rightfully hers. Rosemary, for example, or Rosemary's brother, had taken charge of Zanele's family home in Davidton. And she was hoping to get that house back. And she was also hoping to get assistance with going to school from Rosemary. But you can just see how she was the beacon of hope for the family. She was the beacon of hope even from Bushbuck Ridge, where she was from. Because the people that I spoke to explained about how Rosemary was the poster child for success. For them, they always looked at Rosemary and said, if our children could be like
Could be
that
like
one, you know,
that. Yes.
because she'd made it out of the rural area of Bushbuck Ridge, and she had made it in the big city of lights, and she was driving her own car, had her own house, and as far as everybody else could see, she had her life together, not knowing what it was that it actually had taken for her to get the life that she'd had. But you know, the sad part as well is that had Rosemary not been arrested, there would have been many more bodies, because at the time of her arrest, she was already in another relationship with another man who'd probably been insured, and so
And the sad part is that she was also extending this to other people. I remember she advised a close friend of hers to say, "Oh, you are tired of your husband, take him out," and actually assisted the lady with what do you call these guys? Hitmen. Yes, hitmen to just go out and take the men, but then they confessed because they are human at the end of the day. You know, my biggest worry now comes back to saying, besides this character, the brutal character that we have seen, what are the good things that you've heard about Rosemary from the family, from the community? So I remember she also advised a friend that since you want nothing to do with your husband anymore, I know hitmen, and you've covered him with insurance, you're gonna get money out of it. And I remember I heard, because they had a telephone recording, how lightly she was speaking about it, like she was just sending her to go and buy bread at the shop, which is very disturbing for me. I'm still very curious, and I'm hoping that there's so much that we can do for women like Rosemary before it gets extremely bad. I'm all about solutions, and I'm all about rebuilding, you know, restoring, because I believe that people are beautiful. When we come back after the break, I want us to speak about the good things that you've heard about Rosemary. You are watching a Phenomenal Rise talk show, and the aim of the show more than anything else is to rebuild. And as much as we are aware that there are situations in life that we hardly come out from, like the story of Rosemary Ndlovu, who's now sentenced for life and 100 other years on top of that. But my biggest concern is she is still a woman at the end of the day, and she still has that nature inside of her to bring life and to love and to be kind. And I'm sitting next to Naledi Shange, the author of Rosemary Ndlovu, the killer. When you did your research and finding out about all of these stories and the incidents that Rosemary committed, the crimes rather, that Rosemary committed, what are the other good things that you heard about her? She was a mother at the end of the day. She was a friend. She had been a wife twice, if I'm not mistaken. She was a daughter. She was a sister. What are the beautiful things that you learned about her?
With Rosemary's incarceration, there are certain people who are mourning her being behind bars. One of those people was her mother. I remember when I went to Bushbuck Ridge, and she was going out into the forest to go and get wood in order to cook and all of that. And she said to me that one of the things that she misses about her daughter was the fact that she always took care of her. Rosemary was a very responsible daughter who made sure that her mother was well provided for, despite the fact that she tried to get her mother killed. But she always took care of her mother. One of the things that I also learned from Joyce was that Rosemary, whenever she was around, she loved to have people be happy. So if it meant taking out money from her pockets just to ensure that those around her are happy and the mood is jovial, that was Rosemary for you. I also spoke to the family of her first husband, the Kozas, and they described her as a good makoti at first when she reached the family. And although they said she had her things, her tempers and all of that, but they said initially they believed her to be a good makoti. I spoke to Rosemary's colleagues as well, who said when Rosemary had money, it wasn't money just for her. Everybody around her had to be happy, whether it be lunches that were, you know, on her on that day. So there were certain things that were positive about her. So there are people who are mourning Rosemary as she sits behind bars today.
Okay, that's amazing, because then that gets to show that despite the messed up side, she still has a good side. She still has a good side because she was created, like all of us, she was created in the image of God. And maybe along the way she got disturbed, like you said. I think you raised a very important point when you said someone on Facebook reached out to you and spoke about a curse that was put upon her. Let's touch base on that. We're African people, we hear those stories all the time, and we know people who say, this has also happened to me. So as a journalist, as a person who writes these stories and discovers and gets the opportunity to dig deeper, do you believe that such curses do exist rather? But more than anything else, do you really believe that they can take over somebody's being to that extent where they do not show any remorse even after doing such a bad thing to their families?
I think under normal circumstances, if somebody came to me and I was writing a story and they told me about a curse, as a journalist, I would need to have some sort of proof of that, physical proof of that, to say, show me, give me evidence of what it is that you are saying. And unfortunately, when it comes to things that are spiritual, those cannot always be proven. So it's quite hard for me to say that I believe or don't believe that Rosemary in particular was cursed, but we know that these things do exist. I'm somebody who believes in God, and so in as much as I believe in light, I do believe there is darkness. So when it came to Rosemary's story, the gentleman who was sharing the story to me said Rosemary's mother was married to a traditional healer who was female, a sangoma, right? And the two of them were in a relationship, and they decided that there had to be children that comes out of this marriage. But obviously, since it was a same-sex marriage, they recruited a gentleman in the village to come in and impregnate Rosemary's mother. And Rosemary and her elder sister Audrey, the sister who she murdered, were the two children that came out of that marriage, marriage and the arrangement. And after enduring abuse, from what we've heard, Rosemary's mother decided she was leaving the marriage. Without even discussing anything with the traditional healer, she packed up her things and took her children and left the village. So this particular village, it is known that the Sangoma, who was upset about losing his wife, which is Rosemary's mother, as well as her two children, spoke out a curse against Rosemary's mother, saying that, you know, she would learn she would bear the consequences of leaving her. And so it was believed that Rosemary was basically preying on her own family, eating from inside the family because of this curse. Now, one of the things that I saw when I went to Rosemary's mother's house, it was quite hard to touch on the issue of the curse.
Yes.
But there were certain things that made me say that she even believes as well in certain things of spirituality.
Yes.
For example, there were things that were planted around her yard, which I later learned were things that were meant to protect her, and who knows, even perhaps protect her from Rosemary.
Yes.
Because the very fact that she believes in all these things and they are around her yard, and Rosemary did not succeed in killing her. We know how the hitmen went to the mother's house, and when they got there, they said they saw a frail woman. The gentleman who was there said he saw a frail woman and he couldn't do it, so he asked for a glass of water and he left. So perhaps she was protected.
Yes, she was
protected, and she was aware of what it was that was coming for her. So whether or not I believe in it, the evidence of it is what's been presented before me. But yeah, I guess it's for the people who read the book to say whether they believe there is such a thing and whether it can really have power over a person. So,
yeah. That's very true indeed, because the spiritual part, I think it goes even deeper than that. And I'm also just assuming that Rosemary's mother, probably might have just thought it's her fault, because, if then the curse came from the Sangoma that she was married to, then it must have been her fault, because she's the one who settled for that and the kids came out of that. But not wasting any time, I want us to speak to a young lady sitting at home who says, I want to be a journalist, I want to touch into crime, I want to go deeper into all of these stories. What are the most important things that they can look out for, and how can they best do it?
First of all, journalism has to be a calling, because it cannot be about money.
Yes.
Besides the fact that journalism really doesn't pay, yes. Journalism is not a career that you go into for money. You have to have a passion for people.
Yeah.
You have to have a passion for telling the stories of people. You have to know how to communicate and extract knowledge from people by talking to them, by conversing with them. And be one who documents things very well, Okay. For me, when it comes to journalism, it's something that I grew up doing. I was writing from a very young age. I always enjoyed telling people stories. And I was involved in the school newspaper as well, where I just wanted to always be writing. Words were the only thing that I knew. I was terrible in maths and formulas and all of that. So
Yes.
words were the only thing that I was good at. And so for me, I used my skill to make a career and to also give back as well. I tell other people's stories as a way to give back. So for somebody who wants to study journalism, start where you are right now. Be curious about the environment that you're in. Want to be curious in nature. You should want to know why things are the way that they are. And yeah, go for it. Journalism is, as I said, it's not for everyone. It's a calling. It's tough. But it's a beautiful industry to be in. It exposes you to a whole lot of different people from different parts of the world, different backgrounds and all of that. So it's a fantastic career to get into.
I love that. So I want you to speak to the people that are in your book, the victims that were affected, those that are still alive at this moment. You never know. This episode might reach out to one of them, but what are your words to them as the person that literally had a chance to speak to them, write about a piece of their life that will forever be a part of their lives? You can speak to them.
I just want to say thank you, thank you, because it's not easy, when somebody sits you down and welcomes you into their own home and lays bare their tears, their pain, for nothing in return. You're an absolute stranger when you knock on their door and say, I am so and so, and I just want you to tell me your story, you know? And so I'm grateful for that. And they've done a service not only to South Africans who will get to read the book, but to the victims as well, the people that they've lost. Because the thing is about books, they immortalize a person, Their names are forever written down, their stories are forever written down. So even for generations to come, for the children of the victims, for the children's children of the victims. And I feel as though they've somehow also taken back their power from Rosemary, because in silence, there's oppression as well. So thank you so much for sharing your stories, and I wish strength unto them as well. It's so difficult knowing that you've lost a family member because of one of your own, It's something else when it's a stranger who you've got absolutely no attachment to. But what Rosemary Ndlovu's family went through is something that changed generations to come. And I wish them strength, and I pray for them as well, because it's not easy what it is that they went through. And
I love what you just said. You just said in silence there's oppression, and that is very big, despite the pain that comes with these brutal experiences that we get to experience in this life that we are living in. Don't be silent, no matter how bad it is. Talk about it. Get somebody who you can share your story, your journey, your scars with, because that's the beginning of healing. And today we were speaking about the nature of a woman. What is the nature of a woman from you, and how can we look out for those women, unfortunately, who cannot portray that amazing nature that God has instilled inside of us as women. And this is a phenomenal rise. And this is a phenomenal rise talk show. I'd just like to thank my guest. Thank you so much for showing up today, for taking your time to come and share this amazing journey with us. I know that a lot of people might have read your book already. Some watched the documentary of Rosemary. Thank you for the work that you are doing in the community as well. Thank you so much from me and from behalf of my team.
Thank you so much for having me.
And today we had an opportunity to sit down with the author, Naledi Shange, the journalist rather, who wrote the book of Rosemary Ndlovu, The Killer. This is one of the biggest stories here in South Africa that trended, of a cop that killed about 6, I think she's been charged with 6 murders, and these 6 people happen to be her family members, including her kids, two men that she was married with, and relatives as well, all in the name of claiming money from insurance companies. And because of that, insurance companies have also taken into consideration to change their laws, so that it's not easy for someone to put you under a policy and then take your life and then claim for it. And unfortunately, we live in a world, and we now live in a society where we have a beautiful side and we have a dark side of things. And today we discovered the dark side of a woman. But the topic of the day was very beautiful. We're speaking about the nature of a woman. What is a nature of a woman? And just to keep it short, a nature of a woman is to nurture, is to support, is to love, is to build, is to bring life. But the biggest question of the day today is, then what when a woman does not portray that nature that she's supposed to be portraying, either in her family, in her community, but at the world at large? What may cause a woman to take life after bringing life? What does it mean to you as a person looking at all of these incidents and getting to learn of all of these stories? There are so many undiscovered stories of mothers who take their children's lives for so many reasons. It could be depression, it could be postnatal depression as well, and I think we haven't spoken enough about these challenges because we live in a society, and excuse me for saying the black society, who's still not yet familiar with depression or postnatal depression or all of the challenges that women face. Because in our black society we were taught rather that a woman is supposed to be strong. Ukuthi siyimbokodo, no matter what we go through, no matter what we face, we have to soldier on. But unfortunately, not all the women are going to soldier on. Some are going to respond in a rather disturbing manner, just as we got to learn about Rosemary Ndlovu today. And for me, this was a mental illness. But how can you be able to see the signs? Should you find yourself married to a Rosemary Ndlovu, how do you see the signs? It's unfortunate that when you are still a little child and that happens to be your mother, you won't be able to see the signs until it's too late. But as family members, should you have a Rosemary Ndlovu within your home, how do you then see the signs? But more than anything, because we are all about solutions, we are all about restoring, we are all about impacting, influence, and empowering, and more than anything, educating, so that the more we know about these social issues that we face in our society, the more we will find the strength to solve them. What part can you play to a Rosemary Ndlovu? Let's let the law take its own course. Let's let the judges do their job. But we are humans after all. Let us show a little bit of empathy, kindness, and humanity towards Rosemary Ndlovu's story. What could be the cause of a woman to act the opposite of their nature? And what part can we play in the life of a Rosemary Ndlovu? As a mental health expert, I sit here today and I say, it's important that wherever she is, she does get assistance, whether it's counseling, whether it's sitting down with psychologists who will actually be able to sit down and analyze her mental state of mind and be able to do something about it, so that they can also look out for someone who is just like Rosemary before it becomes too late. I know that when we have someone like Rosemary Ndlovu, whether within our families or within our community, we won't be able to notice from the first murder to the second murder. It will really take 3, 4, 5 murders for us to actually get to understand that we are dealing with a disturbed person, we are dealing with a serial killer, we are dealing with a psycho. The sad part is that she was a cop as well. This is the very same woman who took an oath to protect us, who took an oath to serve, who took an oath to do so much. She was a responsible child. She was taking care of her family. There was so much that she was doing. Her community where she comes from was looking up to her for all that she has achieved. But unfortunately, not only did she disappoint us, but she scarred a lot of people, because there's dead bodies now, because of the trust that was handed over to her. But without furthermore, all I can say regarding Rosemary Ndlovu's story is that let's show a little bit of empathy, kindness, and humanity, and get to understand. Let us do so much research and get so much knowledge on what happens in the mental state of a woman who then does not portray the nature of a woman. Today we had the opportunity to sit down with the author Naledi Shange, who wrote the story of Rosemary Ndlovu, and walk with us through the journey of what else she did discover. Please make sure that you do read the book or you watch the documentary, and let's hold hands as a community, as a society, as a country, as the world at large, and try and find solutions to these disturbing issues that we face.
Care.